Now I'm honored to introduce Councillor Rosalind Campbell of Musqueam Indian Band to give the opening remarks of Sustainable Waves. It was amazing to meet you at the Jeff Assembly, and I can't wait to hear you speak today. Councillor Campbell is a lawyer whose Aboriginal law practice includes the areas of corporate, commercial, and governance. And I'm happy to welcome her to the stage here today.
Thanks, Lillian. Alcian Siega, Antithiliwet, Utnitsen at Homathrium. Needs at Twitquilam, at Utamoch, at Siwen at Homathrium. I let's see, it's not. Honored guests, respected friends, dignitaries, elders. My ancestral name I shared is the Thiliwet, and that name comes from Sanemo. I'm from Sanemo, I'm from Musqueam. I welcome you here today to the traditional, ancestral, unceded lands of the Hunk'umi'num speaking people. And it's good to see all of you here today. That's the translation of the Hunk'umi'num that I shared at the beginning. I too want to acknowledge that I met Lillian at GAF when I did share of the welcoming with our friends and relatives from Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh, and was very excited to open that global environmental facility event, and there's people from all over the world there. And I was walking around after, and Lillian was volunteering there, and our paths crossed, and that's what brings me here today. So thank you for bringing me here today. Like Minister Premier Eby, I want to acknowledge the good work that you're doing with your project, KELP, as well as what's happening here today, Sustainable Waves. I was sharing that I don't think that I could have organized an event like this when I was in grade 12. I wasn't even thinking of that kind of stuff at the time. I'm going to share what I shared at the GAF event. You were in the room and you heard, okay, so Lillian was there. I don't know if any others were there at the time. But I shared our language. For me, I'm not a fluent speaker, but I did grow up hearing my grandparents speak the language. And they weren't keen on passing the language down because in their time, in their lifetime, they felt it was more important to learn English to be successful in this society than for my mother or me to learn that was in Nanaimo, so Hunk'umi'num. However, in my life, I've always, because I heard them speaking it, I learned a little bit. I've always had an interest in the language, and there is a UBC linguistics course where our Hunk'umi'num language is taught in the community. So university UBC students can take the language and then go to Musqueam, where the language is taught by one of our elders, Sly Fuck, very grand, and other community members as well as a linguist from UBC. Okay, so that aside, what I did share at the GAF were a couple of words that I'd like to share here. Because we talk about being connected, and I think at least our Hunk'umi'num language, I think is a good example of our connectedness, of our being all one. So in Hunk'umi'num, the word for the ground that we stand on, the earth, is tamoch. And interestingly enough, the word for someone like myself the peoples who were here before explorers, colonizers, settlers, visitors arrived is xʷməthkʷəy. What I want you to notice is that the ending of the word, the suffix "muk," is at the end, tied onto the end of each of these words. xʷməthkʷəy, the ground that we stand on, or tamok, the ground that we stand on, xʷməthkʷəy, who we are as people. So, there may not be a literal translation, but I think the significance is that there's a connection between the earth and the people. We're connected, maybe we all come from it, and so that's expressed in the language. I think that's really significant in our language and in our culture, and I think it's reflected in our values. Because there's that connectedness, we have to be respectful. Another word that I'd like to share that reflects this is a principle or a value that we share in our language. We say xʷməthkʷəy, we're all one. So I think that's reflected. I've shared a couple of words. I think in this principle or this value, xʷməthkʷəy, we're all one, conveys that in our language. As Musqueam speaking people, our parents, our grandparents, aunts and uncles, older siblings and cousins teach us our snoop, or xʷməthkʷəy. Snoop means teachings. So from the time that we're born, our older family members teach us how to conduct ourselves, how to carry ourselves in the world, how to interact with each other, how to interact with our environment. It becomes a lifelong learning experience, I find. We're always learning from our elders how to conduct ourselves, how to relate to each other, how we're all connected. We talk about our connections within our family, within the community, and within the broader world. We're always talking about how we're connected. We also talk about, are aware that we are stewards in our territories. Before the arrival of visitors, settlers, colonizers, many people in our community had the responsibility to look after certain resources, certain lands, whether it be food resources, the word is escaping at the moment, sturgeon. In Musqueam, there's a story that's been shared about one family who would look after the sturgeon traps, and make sure that they were taken care of, that they would be sustainable, that they would continue on for future generations. And I think I saw this maybe somewhere on one of your websites, Lillian, that we have to make sure that what we have here today is going to be here tomorrow, for not just for us, but for our children and our children's children, and so on into the future. So these are just some of the snoop or xʷməthkʷəy, the teachings that I've grown up with, hearing in my family, in my community, amongst my culture. And I think we have more in common as peoples around this globe than we have differences. Because I don't think those values are different. I couldn't imagine that they would be different anywhere else. But we live in a capitalist economy. And so it's hard to find, governments and even individuals and communities are always trying to find that balance. However, we're at a critical time on this planet with climate change, and we know what the priority is at this time. So this event, Million, is very timely. I appreciate the work that you're doing. I just want to share, I thought, what can I share? I shared a little bit about our language and our culture, and the respect that we have to have for ourselves, for each other, for all life on the planet. So I like that when you were talking about all the R's, the words, the first one you started with, I noticed, was respect, and I think that's really important. Respect for ourselves, respect for our friends and relatives, the animals, for the planet. I wanted to share a little bit of my personal experience, because my parents and my grandparents, environmentalism, activism wasn't like so much directly stated. So when I think about it, I just think what I observed. What did my grandparents and what did my parents do? My grandfather was a fisherman. He was a gardener, farmer. He always, in my lifetime, he always had a garden. He was a canoe builder. So what I observed in my lifetime, what I observed him doing to keep his garden going, he lived by a river. We'd go down to the river in the fall and there would be dead fish along the banks of the river. So he'd take some of that fish, bring it up to his garden, and put it on the ground. And there's his fertilizer. I mean, we also hear about bears going to the river, taking the salmon, bringing it in back into the forest, and it's fertilizing the forest. I know there's chemical fertilizers out there, but in my lifetime, that's what I saw my grandfather do. And I'll say, leading by example, being very respectful of the earth, and using the biodiversity that's out there, the animals, to replenish the grounds that he was using for his farms. I also noticed my grandparents thought very little, unlike myself. I'm a very, very good consumer. I thought about how we have too much, how we consume too much in this time. And when I think about my grandparents, I know they rarely went to the store. They just bought the bare necessities. They were farmers, and so they had fruit and vegetables that they put away. Went to buy what they didn't put away, what they didn't grow, what they didn't catch, and just other things, household items. Not big consumers. There may be a number of reasons for that, but I think it's a good something good for us to reflect back on, whether it's our parents' time or our grandparents' time, not to be such avid consumers. As I think about the terms that we're hearing today, Project KELP and sustainable waves, I live in Musqueam, just a few minutes down the highway, and often, many evenings, I take a walk down to the river, or I drive down to the river to see the sunset. It's a perfect location for that. I've seen many beautiful sunsets down there. I also see waves when vessels are going up and down the river. Huge waves are created, and I'm sitting at the bank of the river, and the waves come in. So you talked about each person doing their part, and they're creating a small wave, and there's a huge impact. When I see these waves change the water may be still, there's a wave that's made, and there's an energy or power that comes with that change in the water. So each one of us, Millions talking about how each one of us can make a difference through sustainable waves, making sustainable waves. So what I see is there's a lot of power in a wave, a lot of energy, and that we each have. We can be a wave and make the change that Million is advocating for and doing good work for. I think I'll stop there. And thank you again, Million, for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts, to welcome people to the territory, and to share my thoughts on the good work that you're doing. And it gives me a moment to reflect and think about what I can do, how I can do better, and very much aware, after this summer, of climate change and the changes that we need to make. So I do want to restate, I want to say thank you again for giving me the opportunity to welcome all of you to the territory. I do want to say this is a critical, has been in the past a critical location for the Musqueam speaking people. I know that, because we're on a point here, our language, Alpsin is the point. We had warriors come out and be at this location because it's a lookout, it's a great lookout to see who's coming in from the west on the waters. So in historical times, yes, Musqueam, the Musqueam speaking people are utilizing the space that the university now sits on. So thank you again for having me here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for sharing your amazing story and how you're connected to all the things that are happening here today. I felt really inspired by your words, and yes, hope that to do better and to see just how interconnected our world is between generations, between sectors, and what we can all do.